James, you were talking about what happened to Alibaba. What do you think about what happened to all of these Chinese tech companies, not just Alibaba in the last summer, education companies, DD, all this stuff? Is that cannibal capitalism or is that something else going on? Where Xi Jinping was like the common prosperity thing, companies need to rein it in, etc.
It is part of cannibal capitalism because why does cannibal capitalism exist? Why are they doing that? They have to if they want to maintain control. That's it. So whether it's Alibaba, whether it's these other companies, Tencent, whoever it might be, these big tech companies, they're all threatening. Think about in a kind of a comparison in a way. It was the antitrust laws of the U.S. and then at the turn of the 19th century. These big corporations had tremendous amounts of power. They controlled transportation of goods and services and people. AT&T controlled the telephone. Was in the 20th century, obviously, but AT&T controlled communication. So a democracy, a republic, a society that is not run from a dictatorship says, look, okay, we're going to destructure that so that you don't threaten the freedoms of people and economic choice. So oligarchies are bad for economies in the long term. They're great for the oligarchies, but they're bad for the economies. China's gone the other way. The Communist Party is, for all intents and purposes, it's in the oligarchy business, and it's in the control business. So this common prosperity, that's a veneer of saying we can't have too powerful tech companies that control communications, that can influence the populace, right? How can they countenance that? The corollary to that is the worse things get economically, the more they need to control the people.
Yeah, I think especially interesting about Tencent and Alibaba was that they were getting into the financial industry, right? Getting into basically you would have to use WeChat Pay or Alipay to pay things since China has become essentially cashless. And then they were getting into the debt economy, like letting people borrow money. And that, I think, was a huge threat.
In a way that had individual Chinese people kind of using money in a way outside of the direct control of China's central banks.
Yeah, so I think that was a huge threat to the CCP too.
The borrowing, the borrowing and the sort of investment products where the way to park your money would be to invest in essentially the loans that these companies were making to people, right? So that sort of circular thing was happening, but within the control of WeChat and Alibaba.
Which, how can CCP really countenance that? How can they keep going and control the message, control who gets the message, control who they're financing, control the money? So it's really the issue underlying all of these things is control.
So do you think, in your experience, Western companies really understand what they're getting into when they try to get into the China market?
They didn't when I wrote the book a number of years ago. They have now. A lot of them make that decision, right? They make that kind of Faustian bargain, and it is a Faustian bargain, probably in every sense of the term. My competitors are taking advantage of China's cheap labor, and they're going to own the market. They're going to undercut me in the market if I don't. So do I want to go out of business tomorrow? Or do I want to have to deal with this China's taking my products, my IP, my tech, my factories down the road somewhere? Well, one is immediate in near term and one is mid to longer term. So there's that calculation being made, obviously. Today, companies are leaving. There's, the reshoring trend, which started under Donald Trump, is picking up steam, and the supply chain disruptions from COVID-19 and from the tariffs that the Trump administration levied, but really COVID-19 really put a fine point on those disruptions. Companies saying, look, why the wage rate in China is much higher. We can build it cheaper in Vietnam or Malaysia or Thailand, or in the European case, in Turkey, or in America's case, in Mexico. And so there's a number of many companies that are reshoring and saying, look, we don't want to deal with the hassle of that, and the political hassle, and the theft of IP, and the theft of technology, and the theft of factories, and those things. So all those are going on. It's happening. So to answer your question, sure, people knew what they were getting into. Maybe not at the very beginning, but certainly today, now that they have a great idea of what's going on, and they're trying to remedy it.
So if companies know what's going on, why do companies keep going in? And I don't think it's really manufacturers anymore, but what we're seeing right now is like a bunch of financial investment firms.
Ray Dalio.
Bridgewater opening a huge China fund, JP Morgan opening a mutual fund, BlackRock opening, like these investment funds in China. So they're obviously, putting their eggs in that basket. So why is that if other companies are pulling out, more? Is it just an industry thing, or why is that happening?
I think it's China realizes what they need. And so did China need financial reforms in 1989, 1990, in the 90s? No, they didn't need it. What they do need, though, today is their financial system is, on the brink of collapse. There are lots of indicators of that, whether it's the whole restructuring of the real estate property development sector, the shadow banking and financing economy on really bad, really horrible investments that are leaving people, the average person bankrupt, whether it's the stock market manipulations that go on where the party benefits, pump and dump schemes and those kinds of things. So they know China lets the West in where they need help. I mean, they're not doing us a favor, are they?
So what you're saying is when China needed manufacturing know-how, they let American companies go in and set up factories and teach all the Chinese workers and managers how to do that stuff so they could rip it off later. And now when they need finance, cash and finance know-how, they're bringing in, Bridgewater and BlackRock and, taking that money and taking that know-how.
It's not just know-how, but it's risk management.
What do you mean by that?
This is a recent development in the last year or so where, all right, we're going to open up our country to you and have, 100% financial penetration, if you wish, in various contexts. Why is that? Well, China alone bears the risk, and we're seeing these risks come to flower in terms of the Evergrande and the financial decisions and the financial investments behind them. China knows that. They can figure that out. They're smart people. They know exactly what's going on. So how do we manage that risk? Well, we spread the risk. And now we're going to, instead of having our debt, our financial problems be ours alone, we're going to let all these Western American companies come in with their money and let them take on some of the risk, and get some of the reward. But now it's not a China thing. Now it's a global thing. Now it's not just in China. It's spread around the world.
Well, I feel like, American investors are taking on a lot of risk without a whole lot of benefit. I mean, China's stock market has not really outpaced inflation in the last 10 years, whereas we're now putting huge amounts of American pension funds and retirement funds and general investment. All of us in America are basically now financing this.
We'd be better off putting our money into Dogecoin. I understand the stonks.
Maybe so, but you might be right about that. But it's financial. Companies with resources and with long-term interest are saying, okay, well, maybe there is kind of a bailout or a bail up or a bail in, whatever that verb is. in China and maybe in the U.S. as well. We're certainly getting our own, building our own debt very rapidly and unprecedentedly. So it's not just in China, but so there's got to be an underlying assumption that the financial companies know what the risk is, and that they also have a way through that risk, which may just be leveraging, the savings rate in China is 35, 37%. So it may well be just taking the money out of the savings, out of the common person's savings, and through one mechanism or another.